All right, here we are. We are in the secret lab. I have Veejay Jones with me, and we're about to perform a VO2MAX test, which is long in coming, right?
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. I always tend to avoid it. I never feel like I'm quite ready for it.
Yeah, so on that note, and we discussed this, the thing with most people when they're thinking in terms of a VO2MAX test, first of all, they think it's going to be just really, really painful. And two, they're concerned their ego is going to be a little tarnished if they don't produce this big number. And truth be told, even though your numbers are very high, I've seen athletes come in with lower numbers that perform very, very well.
Right.
So at the end of the day, what's most important, what really is the driving home point in all of this, is that we want to know when you've shifted your metabolic turn point, when you've gone away from being able to exercise with oxygen available versus being pretty much anaerobic, and the toxicity of that lactate production starts to become a real problem. And so, armed with that information, we're able to develop a pretty strong program. And we've been pretty successful with it so far. I've been successful with the scads of athletes, but before we start to get serious, I mean, you've had a great run so far, right? What are we, 7-0 right now?
Right now? Yeah.
7-0? Shooting for 10? 12?
We'll take it as long as we can.
But at the end of the day, being precise is important. And we were discussing this before we got on camera, before we started recording. And here's what I see. And I see this across the board. So it's not even exclusive to obstacle course racing.
Right.
If you think you're aerobic and you're not, you're doing yourself a great disservice. Because you could very well be lightly anaerobic. And what I'm suggesting is that let's just say that 80% of the energy that you're soliciting to is sugar versus fat. That's a problem. And your perception of your ability to perform for maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, may be strong, and you'd be under the false assumption that all of that effort that you put into your training was aerobic. Right. And it's not. So I hear this a lot from people when we talk about this. They'll say, well, that can't be right, because I will run at 165 beats per minute all the time, and I never have a problem. I'm fine. Right. So my next question generally is, how long did you run? And typically the answer is inside of 60 minutes to maybe 90 minutes. And the longer I press them timeline-wise, the more reluctant they are to give me a clean answer. So if I say, well, can you do it for 2 hours? They have to think about it. If I said, can you do it for 2 hours? What if you had a push? What if you needed to put a little bit of move on somebody? Is it going to be there for you? Because you could be doing okay, you could be ridding yourself of some of the lactic acid that's being produced and managing the work pretty well. And if the distance isn't so long that it's a problem for you, you could survive, right? So here we are getting into the season now. We've got some mountain runs coming up.
Yeah.
And the preparatory work leading into that type of training, it's very, very critical that we don't make the mistake that we think we're cool. In fact, we're not really getting the training stimulus we hope for, right?
Yeah, and I guess the reason we're doing this test now is that we're going off old numbers at the moment. All the training I've been doing is based on a VO2MAX that was over a year ago.
Right.
So things change, athletes adapt, so we're going to run another one so we can get our accurate numbers and make sure that we're in the right zone. When we're trying to be aerobic, we're going to be accurately aerobic, not just what we think is right.
Well, beyond that, the other thing that I wanted to bring to light is that people fear being a slave to their heart rate monitor. They don't want to get into a situation in a race where they keep looking down, it's like a witch hunt, it scares the hell out of them because they don't feel like they're capable of supporting the work because of the numbers they got, or maybe, it just really, it disrupts their process. It messes with their mojo when they're racing. And what I tell most of my athletes is it becomes a training tool. It's what you do when you're training, because training is stimulus. You're doing something to create a particular outcome in your training. And then once you master the training, then you free yourself of the heart rate monitor and your perception is more accurate. You know what it feels like when you're doing the right thing versus what used to be this false assumption that you were doing the right thing. And so when you do go out and race and you feel like you're redlining, you probably are. If you feel like you have more room, you probably do. And you're just more well-informed while you're racing, so it doesn't become this snafu come race day or this witch hunt because Richard said, don't go over 160 beats per minute. And then you felt like, you know, I dropped the ball, I could have pushed a little harder, right? So having said all that, we're going to go ahead and get this test done, and we'll revisit. We are now almost 90% fat utilization at 114 beats per minute, and we definitely need to bring this speed up a little bit. We're 7 miles per hour, and just chugging along very nicely. See how that turned up? So it's not going to allow you to continue to feel all comfortable with yourself. But even still, we're at about 70% fat utilization at 120 beats per minute, 7 miles per hour. We'll pump it up just a little bit. We're at 7.5 miles per hour. And no significant change to fat utilization. No significant change to heart rate, about 128, 129 beats per minute right now. For this young man, it's not barely, it's like sleeping. Take it up to 8 miles per hour. Still in a nice place. I don't want you to get focused on the numbers. I just want you to run and be comfortable. VO2 score right now is 40. We're barely moving. We're 8 miles per hour, 138 beats per minute. No biggie. I'm going to take it up a little bit. Let's see what that does. All right, now we're 9 miles per hour, and it's getting a little more expensive. Very sustainable for the most part. 149 beats per minute, VO2 score is 44. He's good. 150 beats per minute. Everything's looking good. 152. Now we're at a 6-minute mile. Still looking pretty good. VO2 score is starting to climb now. 154. Going to come up on VO2 score about 50 in a sec. Leave that alone, man. You're good. Just run. That's all you got to do. A little bit of a hill to play with. Don't mind the noise. It's just the shocks. Here we go. About 158, 159 beats per minute. 6-minute pace. 52.3 VO2 score right now. I'm going to bring it up. Now 11 miles per hour. I'm going to quiet this down a little bit. VO2 score right now is 56.8, 165. Incidentally, we raced Alabama close to 180 beats per minute. We're at 58.6 now, 170 beats per minute. We're at 11.5 miles per hour, 2% grade. 63.7 VO2 score now. We're all in though. It's all sugar now. This is where the lactate starts to build. 66.5. Give it a little bit more hill to play with. 3% grade. Now, that VO2 score is going to pop soon. Expect it to jump. Come on, baby, do it. Rolling it down. 66.5, here we go. 12 miles per hour. Heart rate's not being affected that much by, we're only like 175 now. 66.5, it's going to pop again, brother. Just hang in there. Do what you're doing. 69.3. Okay, we're starting to work now. Stay in it. Stay in it. Stay floating. Keep that cadence the way you're going. 70. We got 70 VO2 score. 177 beats per minute. 178. Keep it up. Let's go. Let's go for broke. Come on, let's go. Let's get it now. Stay in it. Stay in it. It's gonna pop. It's gonna pop. You'll see. Stay with me. It's gonna pop. I'm telling you. Stay with it. Give me 20 seconds. 19 seconds. 18 seconds. 71.6. Come on, baby. Let's go. Let's get that number. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. It's going to pop again. You'll see. Keep it coming. Stay up there. It's going to pop. I'm telling you. Stay with it. Don't wish you had. Keep it coming. It's going to pop. Come on, Janet. Pop. 71.8. Come on, give it to me. Come on, let's go. 71.8. You're out. You're out. All right, I'm going to bring it down. Good work. So what you're looking at here, this slope here, this foreign slope, where the computer defaulted, it's giving you what's suggested to be your aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold. Now, anaerobic threshold would suggest that you have basically come to this place where anything beyond that is going to be expensive. You're going to become anaerobic. Okay? And that's not accurate in my world, because that puts you at 127 beats per minute. But still, you're at better than 50% of the energy is coming from fat. So that's too conservative.
And based on the races this year, we know that's I can go a little higher and be sustainable.
Right. Well, now we talked about this earlier. Sustainability is a function of time. How long do you need to keep it, and how well can you contend with the insulin production of lactate? So, but I am going to give you credit here, and I'm going to bump this up to right about here. And so you have to realize too that when you're looking at this, the pace in which you're traveling at 136 beats per minute, you're at about 7.5 miles per hour. And I forget what that works out to, but that probably puts you at about 730 pace.
For 7.5 miles an hour?
Yeah, isn't that right? I have to look it up.
I'm not sure.
But the point is that 850 calories per hour are being used, but at this point, about 35% of it is coming from fat. And what we're
such a low heart rate.
I know.
Because usually,
but see, realize that low heart rate doesn't always mean that you're not getting it done. That could represent improvements in your cardiac output. That could suggest your stroke volumes improve. Realize that your body's creating a demand, and the heart rate is fulfilling that demand. So if you can fulfill the demand with 1 beat versus 2, that's more efficient, right? So don't look at the heart rate and go, well, I suck, because that's not appropriate.
Well, the only thing that concerns me is just my heart rate, or my anaerobic threshold, compared to where my heart rate is at.
Right. Well, but let's get past the term for a minute.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at the cost of work and where the energy's coming from. So the thing that I would be more concerned with is what I call the point of no return. When you get to respiratory quotient of 1, which is right there, that's 160 beats per minute. At 160 beats per minute, now 1,220 calories are being used, and 1,220 calories are coming from sugar. And assumption being that there is still opportunity, okay? But you see how that orange line is going way up through the roof? Because this represents the way you've been training and racing. A lot of what we've been doing has been focusing on shorter, faster stuff.
Right.
And so the stimulus you've been creating for your body is allowing you to survive in that toxic environment. Now, what we need to do is that when we start working into the mountains and start working into longer courses, we have to draw that down a little bit. We need to get that aerobic window to be a little higher in your heart rate, keeping the cost of work more economical and the lactate production lower. Because realize that the principal thing to consider when you're anaerobic is that carbohydrate is the principal energy source. And carbohydrate being used as energy produces lactate. And the more lactate you produce without being able to liberate it from the body, the more toxic it becomes, and then it becomes a problem. So this is what we needed to know. This is the information we need to write programs. And we can write it relative to whatever it is we're trying to do.
Okay.
So I don't really want to change too much.
So for example, my last VO2, we left with my aerobic range being 145 to 155.
Yes,
That's changed.
that's changed. But realize that the drop in heart rate does not necessarily mean that you're not functioning well.
I can see that because now the same paces that I was running, 9 months ago, now I run that same pace and my heart rate's like
10 beats, 15
mid,
minutes low.
yeah, it's in the mid 130s instead of being up at like 150.
But think about that. That was you paying retail. Now you're paying wholesale. You understand?
Yeah.
So if your expense account is really taking you into that high heart rate, that's a problem. And so we want to lower the cost of work, improve the efficiency, improve the economy, and then go from there. We just need numbers to work from, and we got that.